Nobody dared to speak to the millionaire until the janitor's daughter offered her a cookie. "Before we begin, tell me something about where you live. What's the weather like today?" The 32nd floor of Sterling Tower buzzed with whispered conversations that died the moment Victoria Sterling stepped into the elevator. At 32, she commanded a business empire worth $300 million, yet couldn't remember the last time someone had spoken to her without fear trembling in their voice. "Good morning, Miss Sterling," her assistant Jennifer murmured, eyes fixed on her tablet screen, never daring to meet Victoria's gaze. The elevator walls reflected multiple versions of Victoria's perfectly composed face. Sharp cheekbones, platinum blonde hair pulled into an immaculate chignon, ice blue eyes that had made grown men weep during hostile takeover negotiations. Victoria said nothing. She hadn't spoken unnecessarily to anyone in 2 years, not since her own brother had tried to steal her company from under her nose. The betrayal had carved something cold and unreachable from her heart, leaving behind a woman who trusted no one and expected nothing but disappointment from human connection. The elevator climbed silently toward her penthouse office, each floor marking another layer of isolation she'd built around herself. Through the glass walls, employees scattered like startled birds whenever her shadow fell across their workspace. They called her the Ice Queen behind her back, and Victoria had grown to prefer it that way. Ice didn't break. Ice didn't hurt. Marcus Johnson pushed his cleaning cart down the same hallway, invisible as always. At 35, he'd perfected the art of being unseen by the wealthy elite who never looked twice at the man who kept their world spotless. His work uniform was carefully pressed despite being second-hand, his dark hair beginning to show silver at the temples from stress and sleepless nights. His daughter Emma skipped beside him, her small hand gripping his worn work shirt, completely oblivious to the corporate hierarchy that surrounded them. "Daddy, why does everyone look so scared here?" Emma asked, her 5-year-old voice cutting through the corporate silence like sunshine through storm clouds. Her curly brown hair bounced with each step, and her bright yellow dress, a garage sale find that Marcus had carefully mended, made her look like a small ray of hope in the sterile business environment. "Some people forget how to smile, sweetheart," Marcus replied, his voice gentle but carrying the weight of exhaustion. He'd been working double shifts for 3 years now, ever since Sarah died in that car accident and left him to raise Emma alone on a janitor's salary. The loss had nearly broken him, but Emma's laughter had slowly pieced his heart back together day by day. Victoria's heels clicked against marble as she passed them, her designer suit a stark contrast to Marcus's humble uniform. She moved like a queen through her kingdom, untouchable and unreachable, but Emma looked up with curious brown eyes, completely unafraid of this intimidating woman who made executives quiver with a single glance. "Hi, pretty lady," Emma called out, her voice bright and innocent, carrying the kind of fearless joy that only children possess. Victoria stopped, turned. For the first time in months, someone had spoken to her without calculation or fear, without wanting something in return. Just simple, honest warmth from a child who didn't know she was supposed to be terrified of the most powerful woman in the building. The cookie was slightly crumbled, warm from Emma's small hand as she held it out like a precious offering. "Want some? Daddy made them this morning before work. They're chocolate chip, the best kind. He says sharing makes everything taste better." The entire hallway held its breath. Victoria Sterling, the woman who'd fired executives for breathing too loudly during board meetings, stared down at this tiny girl, offering her half a homemade cookie with genuine generosity. Employees pretended to work while secretly watching this impossible scene unfold. What happened next would change everything they thought they knew about the Ice Queen of Sterling Tower, and perhaps change Victoria's life forever. Victoria's hand trembled almost imperceptibly as she reached for the cookie, her manicured fingers accepting the simple gift with the reverence usually reserved for million-dollar contracts. In the past 24 months, no one had offered her anything without expecting something massive in return: stock options, promotions, business deals that would make them rich. Yet here stood this child, giving freely with no agenda, no fear, no hidden motives behind her genuine smile. "Thank you," Victoria whispered, the words feeling foreign on her lips after years of commands and cold directives. Her voice cracked slightly, surprising her with its vulnerability. Emma beamed like she'd just given away treasure, revealing a gap where her front tooth used to be. The tooth fairy had visited last week, leaving a crisp dollar bill under her pillow that Emma had immediately wanted to spend on more cookie ingredients. "You're welcome. What's your name?" "I'm Emma Rose Johnson, and this is my daddy Marcus. He's the best daddy in the whole world." Marcus froze. his knuckles white as he gripped the cart handle hard enough to leave impressions. His 5-year-old daughter was talking to Victoria Sterling like she was any other person on the street, completely oblivious to the power dynamics that ruled this tower. He'd heard the stories whispered in the employee break room, executives fired for making eye contact, assistants who quit after one day of her glacial stare, board members who walked out of meetings in tears after her devastating critiques. "I'm Victoria," she said, surprising herself by kneeling down to Emma's level. The movement felt awkward after years of literally and figuratively looking down on everyone from her tower of success. Her expensive skirt touched the floor, something that would have horrified her yesterday but somehow seemed insignificant now. "That's a princess name," Emma giggled, clapping her small hands together with delight. "Are you a real princess? You dress like one in those fancy clothes, and you live way up high like in a castle, for the first time in 2 years." Victoria Sterling almost smiled. The expression felt rusty, like a door that hadn't been opened in far too long. Almost, but not quite. The walls around her heart had been built too high and too strong to crumble from one child's innocent observation. "I suppose I am, in a way," she replied carefully, taking a small bite of the cookie. It was imperfect, slightly burnt around the edges where Marcus had been distracted thinking about Emma's upcoming dental appointment, but it tasted like warmth and love and home. Things she'd forgotten existed in her sterile world of profit margins and hostile takeovers. Marcus watched in stunned silence as his daughter chatted effortlessly with the woman who terrified grown men with decades of business experience. Emma told Victoria about her favorite dolls, her missing tooth that the tooth fairy had rewarded, and how Daddy read her 3 stories every night before bed, doing all the different character voices that made her laugh until her tummy hurt. "We should go, Emma," Marcus finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper, afraid that speaking too loudly might break whatever spell his daughter had cast. "Miss Sterling has very important work to do. She runs this whole building." Victoria looked up at him then, really looked for the first time. She saw bone-deep exhaustion in his kind brown eyes, saw the way his uniform was carefully mended at the seams, saw calloused hands that spoke of hard work and honest labor. When had she stopped seeing people as human beings instead of just obstacles or opportunities? "Actually," Victoria said, standing slowly and brushing invisible dust from her skirt, "I was wondering, would Emma like to see my office? I have a view of the whole city from up there. You can see for miles and miles." The word surprised even her. She hadn't invited anyone into her private space since the betrayal, since her brother had sat in her office and smiled while plotting to steal everything their parents had built. Her office was her fortress, her sanctuary from the world that had hurt her so deeply, it had frozen her heart solid. Emma's eyes went wide with excitement, sparkling like stars. "Really? Can we, Daddy? Please, please, please. I've never seen the whole city before." Marcus hesitated, clearly torn between his daughter's infectious joy and his very real fear of this powerful woman's unpredictable moods and legendary temper. But something in Victoria's ice-blue eyes had changed, shifted like winter ice beginning to crack in spring sunshine. The cold was still there, but underneath it was something else, something that looked almost like loneliness. Victoria's office occupied the entire top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city below. The space was magnificent, but sterile, all clean lines, expensive furniture, and not a single personal photograph or memento to suggest a human being actually worked here. Emma pressed her nose against the glass, her breath fogging the surface as she stared in wonder at the world spread out beneath them like a living map. "It's like we're flying," Emma exclaimed, her small hands leaving tiny prints on the pristine glass that no cleaning service had ever been allowed to touch. "Look, Daddy, I can see the park where we feed the ducks. And there's my school. It looks so tiny from up here, like a dollhouse." Victoria watched the child's amazement, remembering when she used to feel that same wonder about the world. Before business school hardened her edges, before her parents died in that plane crash 6 years ago, leaving her alone with a company to run and a brother who saw her only as an obstacle to wealth, before betrayal taught her that love was just another word for vulnerability. "Tell me about your daddy," Victoria said, settling into a chair beside Emma, trying to remember how to make conversation that wasn't about quarterly profits or market projections. Emma's face lit up like sunrise breaking over the horizon. "Daddy's the absolute best. He makes me pancakes shaped like animals every Sunday morning, and he knows all the words to my favorite songs from the princess movies. He helps me with my homework even when he's really tired from work, and he never gets mad when I spill things or forget to brush my teeth. The innocent honesty hit Victoria like a physical blow to her carefully protected chest. This child carried such mature understanding of her father's sacrifices, yet still radiated pure joy and unshakable faith in his love. Marcus stood frozen by the door, uncertain whether to speak or remain invisible as he'd learned to do over 3 years of night shift cleaning. He'd never expected to be in this position. His daughter befriending the most powerful person in the building while he struggled to make rent each month and worried about Emma's future. "Your daddy sounds wonderful," Victoria said softly. "What about your mommy? Does she work here too?" Emma's expression grew serious, the kind of gravity that children shouldn't have to carry. "She went to heaven when I was a tiny baby," she said matter-of-factly, with the acceptance that came from years of Marcus's gentle explanations. "Daddy says she watches over us from the clouds and that she sends us butterflies and rainbows to let us know she's still taking care of us. Sometimes I wave at airplanes just in case she's flying by in one." Victoria's throat tightened painfully. She'd built walls around her heart to keep out pain. But this little girl's simple acceptance of devastating loss made her own self-imposed isolation seem suddenly ridiculous and self-indulgent. "I lost my parents too," Victoria admitted, the words slipping out before she could stop them, drawn out by Emma's innocent trust. "They died when I was 26. They were in an airplane that crashed during a storm." Emma turned from the window immediately, her brown eyes serious and filled with sympathy beyond her years. "That's really, really sad. Did they go to heaven too?" "I bet they did. Heaven needs good people to help take care of everyone." I hope so," Victoria whispered, her voice barely audible. Without hesitation, Emma wrapped her small arms around Victoria's waist in a fierce hug, the kind of embrace that demanded nothing and offered everything. "I bet they're friends with my mommy now. She likes making new friends, and she's really good at helping people feel better when they're sad." The embrace shattered something inside Victoria's chest, broke through defenses she'd spent 2 years building. When had she last been hugged without calculation? When had someone last touched her with simple human compassion, expecting nothing in return? Marcus watched his daughter work magic he'd never witnessed before. The feared Victoria Sterling was crying, not the manipulative tears of a boardroom power play, but real, honest tears of someone finally allowing themselves to feel again after years of emotional numbness. "Emma," Marcus said softly, "maybe we should let Miss Sterling get back to her important work." "Actually," Victoria said, wiping her eyes with a tissue, her mascara slightly smudged for the first time in years, "I was wondering if you might consider having lunch with me sometime. Both of you. I can't remember the last time I had a real conversation with real people." The invitation hung in the air like a bridge between two completely different worlds, one of wealth and power, one of love and struggle. The Sterling Tower cafeteria buzzed with nervous energy, as word spread through the building like wildfire that Victoria Sterling was eating lunch there for the first time in anyone's memory. Employees pretended to focus on their meals while stealing glances at the unlikely trio seated by the windows, whispering behind their hands about this impossible development in their Ice Queen's behavior. Emma swung her legs from the adult-sized chair, completely oblivious to the stares and whispered speculation. She'd chosen a peanut butter and jelly sandwich from the cafeteria line, insisting it was the best food in the world and Victoria absolutely had to try it. Her enthusiasm was infectious, filling the sterile space with childish laughter that seemed to brighten the entire room. "See? It's crunchy and smooth at the same time," Emma explained with the seriousness of a food critic, watching Victoria take a careful bite. "Daddy makes them perfect every time. He cuts off the crusts and cuts them into triangles because they taste better that way. That's science." Marcus pushed his salad around his plate, still unable to believe he was sitting across from Victoria Sterling like they were old friends sharing a casual meal. 3 days had passed since Emma's first cookie offering, and somehow they'd fallen into this routine. Victoria appearing during lunch breaks, drawn to his daughter's innocent chatter like a moth to flame, like someone starving finally finding nourishment. The transformation was subtle, but unmistakable. Victoria's perfectly styled hair was slightly less rigid, her smile came a fraction easier each day, and she'd actually laughed, really laughed, when Emma told her about the time she'd tried to give their neighbor's cat a bath and ended up soaked herself. "Emma, tell Miss Sterling about your drawing from school," Marcus encouraged, grateful to have the focus on his daughter instead of the growing curiosity in Victoria's eyes whenever she looked at him. He'd noticed her attention, The way she asked about his work, his life, Emma's needs, and it both thrilled and terrified him. Emma pulled a crumpled paper from her pink backpack, smoothing it carefully on the table with the reverence of an artist unveiling a masterpiece. The drawing showed 3 stick figures under a rainbow: a tall man with dark hair, a small girl with curly hair, and a woman in what appeared to be a very fancy dress with yellow hair. "That's me and Daddy and you," Emma announced proudly, pointing to each figure. "Mrs. Peterson said we had to draw our family for the art show, but I thought you could be in our family too because you're always sad and families make people happy. That's what families do. They take care of each other." The simple logic of a 5-year-old's heart struck Victoria speechless. Family. She'd had one once. Parents who loved her unconditionally. Sunday dinners filled with laughter. A future that seemed bright and full of possibility. Then the plane crash took her parents, and grief made her brother desperate and cruel enough to try stealing her inheritance while she was still planning their funeral. "Emma, Miss Sterling has her own family," Marcus said gently, though something in his voice suggested he wasn't entirely sure that was true. He'd noticed Victoria's isolation, the way she ate alone, worked late every night, never mentioned friends or relatives or anyone who cared about her well-being. "Do you?" Emma asked Victoria directly, her head tilted with curiosity, completely unaware that she was asking the most painful question possible. Victoria stared at the drawing, seeing herself included so naturally in this little girl's world, drawn with the same care and love as her father. "No," she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't have a family anymore. I had a brother, but he hurt me very badly. I haven't seen him in 2 years. Then you can share ours," Emma declared with the absolute certainty that only children possess. "Daddy says love gets bigger when you share it, not smaller. Like when you break cookies in half, you get more people to smile, and that makes the cookies taste even better." Across the cafeteria, Jennifer approached hesitantly with a tablet full of urgent messages and meeting requests. Victoria's afternoon was packed with board meetings, acquisition reviews, and contract negotiations worth millions of dollars. The Henderson deal alone could net the company $50 million in profit. But looking at Emma's hopeful face and Marcus's gentle eyes, Victoria made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week ago, a choice that prioritized heart over profit for the first time in years. "Jennifer, cancel my meetings for the rest of the day," Victoria said without looking away from the drawing of their little family. "All of them, Miss Sterling? Even the Henderson acquisition? The lawyers have been working on this for months." "All of them." Victoria's voice was firm but not harsh, carrying new warmth. "I have more important plans." Emma clapped her hands with pure delight. "What kind of plans? Are we going on an adventure?" Victoria smiled, a real smile that transformed her entire face, erasing years of hardness. "I thought maybe we could go to the park. I haven't been to a park in... I honestly can't remember how long it's been." As they left the cafeteria together, whispers followed in their wake like autumn leaves. The Ice Queen of Sterling Tower was melting, and no one could quite believe what they were witnessing. Central Park buzzed with autumn energy as families gathered for Saturday afternoon adventures, the air crisp with the promise of winter and alive with children's laughter. Victoria felt oddly conspicuous in her designer jeans and perfectly styled hair, like she was wearing a costume to play at being normal. She couldn't remember the last time she'd worn casual clothes, the last time she'd been anywhere that wasn't related to business or profit margins. Emma raced ahead to the playground like a small tornado of joy, her small legs carrying her toward the swings with infectious enthusiasm that made other parents smile. "Push me, Daddy. Push me high as the clouds. I want to fly like the birds." Marcus jogged after her, his work-weary face transformed by his daughter's pure happiness. Victoria watched from a bench, marveling at how natural he looked as a father, patient, attentive, completely devoted to Emma's joy without any trace of the exhaustion she knew must be constantly weighing on him. This was love in its purest form, she realized, selfless and unconditional. "Higher." "Daddy!" Emma shrieked with delight, her legs pumping as she tried to reach the sky, her curly hair streaming behind her like a banner of freedom. "Any higher and you'll fly away to join the clouds." Marcus laughed, giving her another gentle push, his hands steady and sure, keeping her safe while letting her soar. "Miss Victoria could catch me if I fly too far," Emma called out, turning to wave at Victoria with one hand while gripping the swing chain with the other, completely confident in this new friendship she'd built with the fearsome businesswoman. Victoria found herself walking closer, drawn by something she couldn't name but desperately needed. When had she last heard laughter that pure and unguarded? When had she last been around people who expected nothing from her except her presence, who valued her for who she was rather than what she could give them? "My turn to push," Victoria announced, surprising both Marcus and herself with the declaration. She'd never pushed a child on a swing, had no idea how much force to use or what rhythm to follow. Marcus stepped aside, watching carefully as Victoria took his place behind the swing. Her first push was tentative, uncertain, like she was afraid she might break something precious and irreplaceable. "You can push harder," Emma encouraged with a giggle. "I'm really strong. Daddy says I'm tough like a superhero." With each push, Victoria felt something loosening in her chest, uncoiling like a spring that had been wound too tight for too long. The rhythmic motion was meditative, peaceful in a way her high-stress corporate life never allowed. Emma's giggles filled the space where anxiety and loneliness usually lived, replacing darkness with light. "Tell me about when you were little," Emma requested, looking back at Victoria with those curious brown eyes that seemed to see straight into people's hearts. Victoria caught the swing gently, slowing its motion so they could talk. "I lived in a big house with my parents. We had a garden where my mother grew roses in every color: red, pink, white, yellow. She said each color meant something different." "Did you have swings in your garden?" "We had everything," Victoria said quietly, memory painting pictures of a childhood that seemed like it belonged to someone else. A swing set, a pool, tennis court, stables with horses. But I spent most of my time studying. My parents wanted me to be successful, to take over the family business someday. "Were you happy?" Emma asked with the directness that only children possess, cutting through pretense to the heart of things. The question stopped Victoria cold, like a physical blow to her chest. Had she been happy? She remembered achievements, awards, recognition, the pride in her parents' eyes when she graduated summa cum laude. But happiness? That seemed like something she'd never had time for, something that had always been postponed for later after the next goal was reached. "I thought success would make me happy," Victoria admitted, the words feeling like a confession. "I thought if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, had enough money and power, then I'd finally feel complete." Emma twisted in the swing to face her fully, her expression serious beyond her years. "Are you happy now? Right here with me and Daddy?" Victoria looked around the park, at Marcus building a sandcastle with some other children who'd wandered over and been drawn in by his gentle kindness, at families sharing picnics on blankets, at couples walking hand in hand, at teenagers playing frisbee. Real life was happening all around her, and for the first time in years she was part of it, instead of watching from behind glass walls. "Right now, in this moment with you." "Yes," Victoria said, surprising herself with the honesty, with how much she meant it. "I think I am truly happy." Emma beamed like she'd just been given the greatest gift in the world and threw her arms around Victoria's waist again, that same fierce hug that had started breaking down walls 3 weeks ago. Over Emma's head, Victoria caught Marcus watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. Gratitude, certainly, but something deeper too, something that made her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with business deals or corporate victories. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Victoria realized she dreaded returning to her empty penthouse apartment. The thought of silence after a day filled with Emma's chatter felt almost unbearable. But as they gathered their things to leave, Emma slipped her small hand into Victoria's. And suddenly, the evening didn't seem quite so lonely after all. The emergency board meeting was called for 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, and Victoria knew exactly why before she even walked into the conference room. Word had spread through Sterling Tower like wildfire over the past month. The CEO was spending time with the cleaning staff, canceling million-dollar meetings to play in parks, and worst of all, she was smiling. The Ice Queen was melting, and that terrified the people who profited from her emotional isolation. Board members filed into the conference room with grim expressions and expensive suits led by her uncle Harrison Sterling, her father's younger brother who'd always resented being passed over for company leadership when their father died. Harrison had never forgiven Victoria's father for choosing competence over birthright, and he'd been waiting years for Victoria to show weakness he could exploit. "Victoria, we need to discuss your recent behavior," Harrison began without preamble, his silver hair perfectly styled, his suit worth more than Marcus made in 6 months, his cold blue eyes, so similar to her father's, yet lacking all warmth, fixed on her with disapproval. "My behavior?" Victoria settled into her chair at the head of the polished conference table, noting how the other board members avoided eye contact. These people had made millions from her company's success under her leadership, but not one had ever asked about her well-being or happiness. "You've been seen fraternizing with employees," board member Patricia Wells interjected, her disapproval evident in every sharp line of her face. "It's unprofessional and frankly concerning. It undermines the authority structure that keeps this company profitable." Victoria studied the faces around the table, men and women who'd grown rich from her brilliant strategies and ruthless business decisions, who'd never questioned her methods when they were depositing their dividend checks, but now sat in judgment of her humanity. "I've been having lunch with a 5-year-old child and her father," Victoria said calmly, her voice steady despite the anger building in her chest. "If that concerns you, perhaps we need to examine your priorities and what kind of company we want to be." Harrison leaned forward, his eyes cold with calculation and barely concealed ambition. "Victoria, your parents built this company on respect and authority. You can't maintain that by playing in sandboxes with the cleaning staff. It makes you look weak, unstable." The mention of her parents hit its intended target, but Victoria felt Emma's fierce hug in her memory and found strength she didn't know she possessed. Her parents had built this company, yes, but they'd also loved her unconditionally, valued her happiness above profit margins. "My parents built this company on treating people with dignity and respect," Victoria replied, her voice carrying new steel. "Something we seem to have forgotten in our pursuit of quarterly profits. They would be ashamed of what we've become." "The stockholders are asking questions," another board member added nervously. "Your erratic behavior is affecting confidence in your leadership. Stock prices have fluctuated every time someone posts a photo of you at that park." Victoria stood slowly, her hands flat on the polished conference table, every inch the powerful leader who'd built a $300 million empire. For 2 years, she'd let fear and betrayal turn her into something cold and unreachable. But Emma's innocent question echoed in her mind. "Are you happy?" "Let me be very clear about something," Victoria said, her voice carrying the authority that had cowed hostile takeover attempts and boardroom coups. "I am the majority shareholder of this company. I own 51% of Sterling Industries, inherited from my parents, earned through my own blood, sweat, and brilliance, and legally unassailable." The room fell silent except for the ticking of the antique clock her father had brought from his first office. "If my happiness and humanity threaten your comfort and profit margins, perhaps you're not the right people to help me lead this company into the future," Victoria continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Because for the first time in 2 years, I remember why my parents loved this business. They loved the people, all the people from the CEO to the janitor." Harrison's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. "Victoria, you're making a mistake that could cost us everything. Sentiment doesn't pay shareholders." "No, Uncle Harrison," Victoria said quietly but with absolute conviction. "The mistake was letting grief and fear and your poisonous whispers turn me into someone my parents wouldn't recognize. That ends today. Either support me in creating a company with heart, or find somewhere else to invest your money." She gathered her papers and walked toward the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. "The Henderson acquisition meeting is moved to 2 p.m. I have a lunch date with a 5-year-old who thinks I'm worth her time, and frankly, her opinion matters more to me than any of yours." As Victoria left the boardroom, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of choosing love over fear, humanity over profit. In the hallway, Marcus was replacing trash bags from office wastebaskets, Emma helping by holding the new bags open and chattering about her upcoming school play. When Emma saw Victoria, her face lit up like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. "Miss Victoria, are you ready for lunch? Daddy packed extra cookies today and I drew you another picture." Victoria knelt down to Emma's level, pulling the little girl into a hug that felt like coming home after years of wandering in the cold. "I've been ready all morning, sweetheart," Victoria whispered into Emma's hair. Behind them, through the conference room's glass walls, the board members watched in stunned silence as their ice queen melted completely, transformed by the simple love of a child who saw her heart instead of her bank account. 3 weeks after the boardroom confrontation, Victoria found herself doing something she'd never imagined possible, sitting on Marcus's small apartment couch, helping Emma with her kindergarten homework while he prepared dinner in the tiny kitchen. The apartment was nothing like her penthouse, with its second-hand furniture and walls that needed painting, but it felt more like home than anywhere she'd lived in years. "Miss Victoria, How do you spell friendship? Emma asked, her tongue poking out in concentration as she worked on her assignment about people who were important to her. Friendship, Victoria spelled out, watching Emma carefully write each letter in her best handwriting. The little girl was writing about their friendship, complete with a drawing of the three of them holding hands in front of Sterling Tower. From the kitchen came the sounds of Marcus cooking, something simple but filling, she knew, because his grocery budget was stretched thin even with the small raise Victoria had quietly arranged through HR. She'd wanted to do more, but Marcus had pride, and she was still learning how to help without making him feel like charity. "Daddy, is Miss Victoria staying for dinner again?" Emma called out hopefully. "If she wants to," Marcus replied, appearing in the doorway with flour on his apron. "I made enough spaghetti for an army. Emma insisted we needed to feed you properly because you're too skinny." Victoria laughed, a sound that came easier now after weeks of Emma's infectious joy. "I'd love to stay. But first, I have something to tell you both." The serious tone in her voice made Marcus set down his wooden spoon and join them on the couch. Emma crawled into his lap, sensing that this was important grown-up talk. "The board is pressuring me to distance myself from you," Victoria said carefully, not wanting to frighten Emma with the harsh reality of corporate politics. "They think our friendship is bad for business." Marcus's face went pale. He'd always known this was too good to be true, that someone like Victoria Sterling couldn't really be friends with someone like him. "I understand," he said quietly. "We don't want to cause you any trouble." "No, you don't understand," Victoria said firmly, reaching out to take his hand. The touch sent electricity up her arm, and she saw something flicker in his eyes that made her heart race. "I told them that they could accept my friendship with you both or they could find new jobs. This company was built on treating people with dignity, and I'm not changing that for anyone." Emma clapped her hands with delight. "You told them we're your family now." "Yes, sweetheart, I did." Victoria's voice was soft but determined. "Because that's what you are. You're the most important people in my life." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning that went beyond simple friendship. Marcus stared at her, seeing something in her eyes that made his breath catch. Could someone like Victoria Sterling really care about someone like him? "Victoria," he said quietly, "you could lose everything." "I already lost everything that mattered once," she replied, thinking of her parents, her brother's betrayal, the years of loneliness. "I won't make that mistake again. Emma showed me what was missing from my life. Love, real connection, family. I won't give that up for money or power." Emma launched herself from her father's lap into Victoria's arms, nearly knocking her over with the force of her hug. "I love you, Miss Victoria. You're the best not really mommy ever." The innocent words hit Victoria like lightning. Not really mommy. Is that what she'd become to this precious child? The thought filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. Over Emma's head, Victoria met Marcus's eyes and saw her own feelings reflected there. Hope, fear, and something deeper that neither of them had dared to name yet. "I love you too, Emma," Victoria whispered, meaning it more than any word she'd ever spoken. "Both of you." The admission changed everything, and they all knew it. There was no going back now from this new family they'd accidentally created, no matter what the consequences might be. As they sat down to dinner at Marcus's small table, Victoria realized she'd never felt richer in her life, surrounded by mismatched dishes and unconditional love. The scandal erupted on a Monday morning when a photo appeared on the front page of the city's business journal. Victoria Sterling holding hands with Emma Johnson outside a toy store, both of them laughing at something Marcus had said. The headline read, "Sterling Industries CEO's questionable relationships raise corporate governance concerns." Victoria stared at the newspaper in her office, fury building in her chest like a storm. Someone had been following them, photographing their private moments, turning her happiness into ammunition against her. The article questioned her judgment, her fitness to lead, and most cruelly, suggested that her relationship with Marcus was somehow inappropriate or calculated. Her phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, board members, and stockholders demanding explanations. Jennifer fielded them all with increasing stress, her usually perfect composure cracking under the pressure. "Miss Sterling, Harrison Sterling is here to see you," Jennifer announced over the intercom, her voice tight with anxiety. "Send him in," Victoria replied, steeling herself for battle. Harrison entered with the confident stride of a man who thought he smelled blood in the water. Behind him came Patricia Wells and two other board members, their faces grave with manufactured concern. "Victoria, this has gone too far," Harrison began without preamble, dropping the newspaper on her desk. The board has lost confidence in your leadership. We're calling for a vote of no confidence. Victoria looked at each of their faces, seeing the greed and ambition hidden behind their righteous indignation. Based on what? Our stock prices are at an all-time high. Our quarterly profits exceeded projections by 20%. Our employee satisfaction scores have improved dramatically since I started treating people like human beings instead of profit centers. Based on this, Patricia said, pointing at the photo, you're involved with an employee. It's a conflict of interest, a scandal waiting to happen. What happens when he sues for sexual harassment? What happens when the media finds out you're paying him special attention? Marcus Johnson is not my employee, Victoria said coldly. He works for the cleaning service we contract with, and our relationship is none of your business. Everything you do is our business when it affects the company, Harrison shot back. This little friendship of yours has made you soft, distracted. The old Victoria would never have turned down the Morrison merger because she was too busy playing house with the help. The insult hit its mark, but Victoria had learned strength from Emma's innocent courage and Marcus's quiet dignity. The Morrison merger would have cost 800 jobs. The old Victoria might have sacrificed those families for profit margins, but I won't. This company will succeed without destroying lives. Sentiment doesn't pay dividends, another board member interjected. Neither does bad publicity, Victoria countered. And if you think I'll be intimidated by gossip and corporate politics, you've forgotten who you're dealing with. I built this company's success. I can tear down anyone who threatens it. Harrison leaned forward, his eyes cold as winter. We have the votes, Victoria. Step down gracefully, take a generous severance package, and fade away quietly. Fight us, and we'll make sure every newspaper in the country knows about your inappropriate relationship with that janitor. The threat hung in the air like poison. Victoria understood now. This wasn't about corporate governance or stockholder concerns. This was about power, about men who couldn't stand seeing a woman succeed on her own terms. Get out of my office, Victoria said quietly, her voice carrying deadly calm. Victoria, get out, she roared, her composure finally cracking. All of you, get out before I have security escort you out. They left, but Victoria knew the real battle was just beginning. They had the votes, the influence, the old boys network that had always resented her success. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd threatened the people she loved. As she sat alone in her office, Victoria picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in 2 years. David, it's Victoria Sterling. I need the best corporate attorney in the city, and I need them now. Someone just declared war on everything I've built, and I intend to win. The Ice Queen was back, but this time she was fighting for love instead of just survival. The legal battle raged for 2 weeks while Victoria worked 18-hour days, fighting for control of her own company. Marcus watched her exhaust herself, saw the stress eating away at her newfound happiness, and felt helpless to do anything but offer quiet support and Emma's unconditional love. Miss Victoria looks sad again, Emma observed one evening as they sat in Victoria's penthouse apartment. She'd been staying there most nights, afraid to leave Victoria alone with her fears and anger. Victoria was hunched over legal documents at her dining table, her face pale with exhaustion. She'd barely eaten in days, surviving on coffee and determination while her lawyers battled Harrison and the board in depositions and meetings. She's fighting for something very important, sweetheart, Marcus explained, though his own worry was evident in his voice. He'd never seen anyone push themselves so hard, and he was terrified she would collapse under the pressure. Emma slipped off the couch and walked to Victoria's chair, climbing into her lap without invitation. Daddy says when you're scared, hugs help make you brave. Victoria wrapped her arms around the little girl, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and finding strength in her solid warmth. What if I lose, Emma? What if they take the company away from me? Then you'll build a new one, Emma said with the simple confidence of a child who believed adults could do anything. And we'll help. I'm really good at making cookies for workers who get hungry. Despite everything, Victoria smiled. You know what? You're absolutely right. I've built one company from almost nothing. I can do it again if I have to. Marcus joined them, his large hand gentle on Victoria's shoulder. You won't have to do it alone, he said quietly. Whatever happens, we're with you. The touch of his hand, the warmth in his voice, made Victoria's heart skip. Over the past weeks, their friendship had deepened into something neither of them had dared to name. She found herself thinking about him constantly, looking forward to his gentle smile and quiet strength more than any business victory. Marcus, she began, then stopped, afraid to voice what was in her heart. I know, he said softly, understanding without words. I feel it too. The moment was interrupted by Victoria's phone ringing with an urgent tone. Her lawyer's name flashed on the screen. David? What's the verdict? Victoria answered, her heart pounding. We won, came the triumphant voice. Harrison tried to buy votes, but we had evidence of his financial misconduct from the Morrison deal. 3 board members have resigned and the others have dropped their vote of no confidence. The company is still yours, Victoria. Victoria closed her eyes, relief flooding through her like warm water. Thank you, David. Send me the details tomorrow. There's more, David continued. Harrison's been embezzling funds for 2 years. The FBI wants to talk to you about pressing charges. When Victoria hung up, she found Marcus and Emma watching her with hopeful expressions. We won, she said simply, then laughed with pure joy. We won! Emma cheered and threw her arms around Victoria's neck. I knew you would. You're the strongest person in the whole world. But Victoria was looking at Marcus, seeing pride and love shining in his eyes. I couldn't have done it without you, she said. Either of you. You gave me something worth fighting for. Victoria, Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. There's something I need to tell you. What is it? I love you, he said simply. I know we're from different worlds. I know it's complicated. But I love you. Both Emma and I do. Victoria's heart soared like Emma on her swing, reaching for the clouds. I love you too, she whispered. I love you both so much it scares me. As they held each other in the glow of victory and newfound love, none of them noticed the storm clouds gathering outside, or knew that their greatest test was yet to come. The revelation came from an unexpected source. Harrison Sterling's desperate attempt at revenge. Facing embezzlement charges and the loss of his position, he hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on Victoria's relationship with Marcus. What the investigator found changed everything. Victoria was reviewing acquisition proposals in her office when Jennifer buzzed her with unusual urgency. Miss Sterling, there's a man here who says he has important information about Marcus Johnson. He says it's urgent. The private investigator was a thin, nervous man with shifty eyes and the demeanor of someone who made his living in other people's secrets. He placed a manila folder on Victoria's desk with the air of someone dropping a bomb. Miss Sterling, I was hired to investigate your relationship with Marcus Johnson, he began. What I found, well, you need to see this. With trembling hands, Victoria opened the folder. Inside were documents, photographs, and a report that made her blood run cold. The first page contained a death certificate for Sarah Johnson, dated 5 years ago, along with newspaper clippings about a car accident. But it was the second set of documents that made Victoria's world tilt on its axis. The accident that killed Sarah Johnson, the investigator said quietly, was caused by a drunk driver, a wealthy businessman who was texting while driving under the influence. He ran a red light and hit her car head-on. Victoria's hands shook as she read the police report, the witness statements, the insurance documents. Her breath caught in her throat as she reached the final page, the name of the drunk driver who had killed Marcus's wife and Emma's mother. Richard Sterling, her brother, the same brother who had tried to steal her company, who had betrayed her trust and broken her heart, had also destroyed the Johnson family 5 years ago. The irony was cruel beyond belief. The man whose daughter had saved her from loneliness was the man whose life her brother had shattered. There's more, the investigator continued. The case was settled out of court. Richard Sterling paid $2 million to avoid jail time. Marcus Johnson never knew who killed his wife. The records were sealed as part of the settlement agreement. Victoria stared at the documents, her mind reeling. Marcus didn't know. He had no idea that the woman he was falling in love with was the sister of the man who had destroyed his life, who had taken Emma's mother away before the little girl was even old enough to remember her. Does anyone else know about this? Victoria whispered. Your Uncle Harrison hired me to find it. He plans to use it to destroy your relationship and force you out of the company. He figures when Marcus finds out, he'll never forgive you. After the investigator left, Victoria sat alone in her office, staring at the documents that held the power to destroy everything she'd found with Marcus and Emma. The guilt was overwhelming. How could she face Marcus knowing her family had taken everything from him? How could she look at Emma knowing her own blood had made that precious child motherless? Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Emma wants to know if you're coming for dinner tonight. She's making you a surprise. Victoria stared at the message, tears streaming down her face. How could she sit at their table, accept their love knowing the truth? But how could she tell them without destroying the family they'd built together? For the first time since she was a child, Victoria Sterling had no idea what to do. The business world had taught her to be ruthless, calculating, to always find the winning strategy. But there was no winning move here, only the choice between living with a terrible secret or destroying the people she loved most in the world. As afternoon faded to evening, Victoria made the hardest decision of her life. She picked up her phone and typed a response to Marcus. "On my way. Tell Emma I can't wait to see her surprise." She would go to dinner, she would smile and laugh with them one more time, and then she would find a way to tell them the truth, even if it cost her everything, because Marcus and Emma deserved honesty, even if it broke all their hearts. Victoria arrived at Marcus's apartment with a forced smile and a heart full of lead. Emma met her at the door wearing a paper crown she'd made at school, her face glowing with excitement about her surprise. "Close your eyes, Miss Victoria. No peeking," Emma commanded, taking Victoria's hand and leading her carefully into the small living room. When Victoria opened her eyes, she gasped. The apartment was transformed with handmade decorations, paper flowers, colorful streamers, and a banner that read, "Happy Family Day," in Emma's careful kindergarten handwriting. "Surprise!" Emma shouted, throwing her arms wide. "Daddy helped me make it beautiful because you're sad about work, and parties make everyone happy." Marcus appeared from the kitchen, flower in his hair and a soft smile on his face. "Emma insisted we needed to celebrate our family," he explained. "She said you needed to remember that some things are more important than business meetings." Victoria's throat tightened with unshed tears. Here they were, celebrating their little family while she carried the knowledge that could destroy it all. The weight of her secret felt like it was crushing her chest. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Victoria managed, kneeling to hug Emma. "The most beautiful party I've ever seen." Dinner was Emma's favorite. Spaghetti with meat sauce and garlic bread. Simple food made with love. Emma chattered about her day at school, about the boy who pulled her hair, which meant he liked her, according to her teacher, and about the book report she was writing about families. "I'm writing about us," Emma announced proudly, "about how families don't have to be the same to love each other. Mrs. Peterson says love makes a family, not just being born together." The innocent words hit Victoria like daggers. Love makes a family. But what happened when that love was built on a foundation of secrets and lies? After dinner, as Marcus tucked Emma into bed, Victoria sat on the couch staring at the family photos on the wall, pictures of Marcus and Sarah's wedding, Emma as a baby, Marcus and Emma at various parks and playgrounds, a life full of love that had been shattered by her brother's selfish choices. "She's asleep," Marcus said softly, joining Victoria on the couch. She was so excited about tonight. "She's been planning this family party for days." "Marcus," Victoria began, her voice barely above a whisper, "there's something I need to tell you. Something important." He took her hand, concerned by the pain in her voice. "What is it? Is it about the company? The board?" Victoria looked into his kind brown eyes, seeing trust and love there, and felt her heart breaking. "It's about Sarah. About the accident." Marcus went very still. "What about the accident?" With shaking hands, Victoria pulled out copies of the documents the investigator had given her. "I found out who killed her, Marcus. The drunk driver who ran the red light." Marcus took the papers, his face growing pale as he read. Victoria watched the exact moment when he reached her brother's name, saw his eyes widen with shock and then narrow with something that looked like betrayal. "Your brother," he said flatly. "Your brother killed my wife." "Marcus, I didn't know. I swear to you I had no idea until today. When Richard tried to steal the company from me, I cut all contact. I haven't spoken to him in 2 years. Marcus stood up abruptly, pacing to the window, his hands clenched into fists. $2 million, he said bitterly. He paid $2 million to avoid going to prison for killing Sarah, and I never even knew his name. "Marcus, please? How long have you known?" he asked, turning to face her. "How long have you been sitting at my table, playing with my daughter, knowing that your family destroyed our lives?" "I found out today," Victoria said desperately. "I came here tonight because I couldn't keep it from you. I couldn't lie to you anymore." "Anymore?" Marcus's voice was cold now, nothing like the warm tone she'd fallen in love with. "What else have you been lying about? Was any of this real or was it all guilt? Poor little rich girl trying to make up for her brother's crimes?" The accusation hit Victoria like a physical blow. "That's not true, Marcus. I love you. I love Emma. I love you. This has nothing to do with guilt or pity. Get out," Marcus said quietly. "Marcus, please let me explain." "Get out," he shouted, his voice breaking with pain and rage. "Get out of my home! Get out of our lives! I never want to see you again!" Victoria ran from the apartment with tears streaming down her face, Marcus's words echoing in her ears. Behind her she could hear Emma crying, awakened by the shouting calling for her daddy to stop being angry. As Victoria sat in her car outside the apartment building, she realized that Harrison had gotten his revenge after all. He'd found the one truth that could destroy her happiness completely, and now the family she'd found and lost was gone forever. The Ice Queen was back, but this time the cold came from a heart that was truly, irreparably broken. 3 months later, Victoria Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office, watching the city wake up below. She'd won every battle that mattered in the business world. The company was more successful than ever. Harrison was in prison, and her reputation was stronger than it had ever been. But she'd lost the only war that truly mattered, the fight for love and family. Emma's drawing still hung on her office wall, the one showing their little family holding hands. Jennifer had tried to remove it several times, but Victoria wouldn't let her. It was a reminder of what she'd had and lost, of the price of secrets and the weight of family sins. The knock on her door was soft, almost hesitant. "Come in," Victoria called, expecting Jennifer with her morning schedule. Instead, Emma Johnson walked into her office, wearing her best dress and clutching a handmade card. Behind her, Marcus stood in the doorway, looking older and more tired than Victoria remembered, but his eyes held something different than the anger she'd seen 3 months ago. "Emma?" Victoria breathed, her heart stopping at the sight of the little girl she'd missed every single day. "Miss Victoria." Emma ran across the office and threw herself into Victoria's arms with the same fierce enthusiasm she'd always shown. "I missed you so much. Why did you go away?" Victoria looked over Emma's head at Marcus, questions in her eyes. He stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. "She's been asking for you every day for 3 months, Marcus said quietly. "She doesn't understand why you stopped coming to dinner, why you stopped pushing her on the swings. She thinks she did something wrong." "Oh, sweetheart, no," Victoria whispered into Emma's hair. "You didn't do anything wrong. You're perfect, absolutely perfect." "Then why did you leave us?" Emma asked, pulling back to look at Victoria with those honest brown eyes. "Daddy's been sad, and I've been sad, and our family is broken without you." Victoria's throat closed with emotion. She looked at Marcus, seeing pain and something else in his expression, the same loneliness that had once consumed her. "Emma, why don't you show Miss Victoria your card while I talk to her?" Marcus suggested gently. Emma nodded and climbed into Victoria's chair, carefully smoothing out her handmade card on the desk. It was another family drawing, but this one was different. The 3 figures were separated by a large crack down the middle of the paper, with sad faces and drooping shoulders. "This is our family now," Emma explained seriously, all broken and sad. "But look," she flipped the card over to reveal the same family, but this time they were holding hands again, with smiles and a rainbow overhead. "This is what it could look like if everyone forgave each other like in Sunday school." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Emma, it's more complicated than that." "No, it's not," Emma said with the absolute certainty of a 5-year-old. "Mrs. Peterson says families forgive each other because love is stronger than being mad. And Daddy told me about my mommy and your brother. And I know it's really sad, but my mommy wouldn't want us to be sad forever." Victoria looked at Marcus in shock. "You told her?" "She deserved the truth," Marcus said. "Age-appropriate version, but the truth. And she's right, Victoria. Sarah wouldn't want us to live in anger and pain. She'd want Emma to be happy, to have all the love possible in her life." "I've spent 3 months being angry," Marcus continued, his voice rough with emotion. "Angry at your brother, angry at you for being related to him, angry at the whole situation. But the anger isn't hurting Richard. He's already paying for what he did. The anger is only hurting us, hurting Emma." Victoria stood up slowly, hardly daring to hope. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I love you," Marcus said simply. "Emma loves you. You're part of our family, and families stick together even when it's complicated and messy and hard. But your wife would want her daughter to have a mother who loves her," Marcus interrupted. "Would want me to find love again. Would want us to build something beautiful from the wreckage of tragedy." Emma jumped up from the chair and grabbed both their hands, pulling them together. "Say you're sorry and hug it out," she commanded with the authority of someone who'd learned conflict resolution in kindergarten. Victoria looked into Marcus's eyes and saw forgiveness there, saw love that had survived anger and pain and the weight of terrible truths. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry for my brother's choices. Sorry for the pain my family caused yours. Sorry for keeping secrets. I'm sorry too, Marcus replied. Sorry for pushing you away when you were brave enough to tell me the truth. Sorry for letting anger win instead of love. When they kissed, Emma cheered and clapped her hands. Now we're a family again. Can we go get ice cream to celebrate? As they left Sterling Tower together, the successful businesswoman, the hard-working father, and the little girl who'd brought them together with nothing more than a cookie and an open heart, Victoria realized that sometimes the most broken things could be mended into something even more beautiful. Emma skipped between them, holding both their hands, chattering about wedding plans and whether Victoria would officially become her new mommy, and maybe they could get a puppy to complete their family. Victoria Sterling had built a business empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but walking down the street with Marcus and Emma, she knew she'd finally found the only treasure that truly mattered. A family bound not by blood or convenience but by choice, forgiveness, and unconditional love. The Ice Queen had melted completely, replaced by a woman who understood that the richest people in the world were those who had others to love and be loved by in return. And it had all started with a 5-year-old girl brave enough to offer a cookie to a stranger, proving that sometimes the smallest gestures could change everything.